Under the sea, please YouTube algo, realize this is a parody. Hey everybody, it's time for another GMG review. It's that time, the almost meme qualified Idoneth Deepkin, living off their first edition Age of Sigmar Codex until now, has finally got their Codex Battletome. Their Battletome. It's Battletome, Idoneth Deepkin, kindly sent along as a review sample by Games Workshop. And what do we got here? Well, we've got a 96 page update to the Idoneth Deepkin, rolling in the new War Scrolls that were in Fury of the Deep, giving us some revamped rules for all the enclaves, revamped rules for all of the items, and some kind of revamped War Scrolls and a bit of revamped army construction. But by and large, there's not a lot of surprises here. This book has been patched a number of times already in Marathi, and then of course through Fury of the Deep, and several updates. And what we really have here as far as like sort of like a summation of this Battletome is we have the Battletome become fully 3rd edition Age of Sigmar compliant. So there's not a ton new here. There's some subtle changes to units, but for the most part, the role that your units had on the battlefield is gonna be pretty much the same as it was. So 96 pages, full color, but finally this eldest of Battletomes is brought in to the modern era. It updates, of course, all of the stories that have been evolving from 3 editions of Age of Sigmar. The, of course, history of the Idoneth, how they came out a little weird when they were rescued from Slaanesh, through Teclis trying to fix them and them staying weird, to them running off to Ulgu, basically at the bottom of the ocean, forming their enclaves, to some more sort of expansion on the different enclaves themselves. I love the pictures of the enclaves. You kind of have a look at what they look like now, and you get a real, you know, rapture kind of thing going on. Where there's lots of like weird, tenderly lit up underwater kingdom stuff. They talk about the Aether Sea and how that works, and just various places that they kind of are inside the sort of like Ulgu areas. And then of course we got some stuff where we see their enclaves inside of Hysh as well, where they make contact with the other elves. Sort of standard timeline, what's been going on since the Necroquake and stuff. How they organize their forces. Now, because this was a 1st edition book and so sort of like, I guess like early on in the formation of Age of Sigmar, there wasn't a ton of like expansion into how they were like constructed sort of like as a people or as a military. And the game, or the book, does kind of like expand upon that. The roles of like the Ishrans, the Kellyanne, so like the Ishrans is like kind of advisors and mages and stuff to the Kellyanne. And then the different battalions, so like the Kellyanne battalions and the Namarti, who are of course the kind of like thralls, they're the elves that their soul didn't come out quite right, and they don't have eyes. They look like sort of like cave fish. Now, something I love, they have moved away a bit from the glossy art style of early Age of Sigmar into this, some of that sweet, sweet line art, almost cartoony stuff that we first saw in Cursed City is now in the book. And I love this. It's got a sort of like punk rock savagery to it, which, I mean, this is great. This sort of like high quality airbrush digital style painting, but I don't know, there's something kind of primal about this, and I'm glad it's seeping into the books and that we don't have a singular art style in the book anymore. There's a real cool thing, I think, when you start to see sort of a bit more, I don't know, a bit more edge to the books. Of course, some overviews of all the different enclaves, more history of the Eidolon and how the sea god is broken into pieces. And then a whole new thing on the one new unit we get, which is the Kellyanne Thrall Masters. Now, I basically started my Idoneth army at the launch of them in 1st edition. I loved the book, so I went and picked up all the units and painted them up. And getting sort of like more information about them, I think, is super cool. It makes me want to paint the other Eidolon, the mage one. And of course, pick up a couple units I haven't actually painted yet. I need to do some lightning eels, which is the one unit I don't have for the eels. Everything else I can already have. I have Volturnus painted up, but I use him as an Kellyanne King, but I could do a proper Kellyanne King too. And I actually don't have the Soul Scryer either, although there's a few reasons to use him now in the actual rules for the game. So, beautiful color section. Ash, just get on with it. We just want to see what the rules are. And you keep looking at all these pretty pictures and painting guides, of course giving us contrast and regular. Oh, I'm dragging it out, aren't I? It must be painful for those of you that don't care about any of this stuff. And yet here we are. Forces of the Idoneth. Ah, we got there. Ha ha. I'm the worst. So, typical 3rd edition construction for the book. Allegiance abilities, battle traits, all of your enhancements, which of course are your command traits, artifacts, power mount traits, and spell lores, then the different Enclave rules. Now, I will say the Enclave rules are much more streamlined than the originals and less restrictive. They take a page from the Enclaves and Clans, from the Orc War Clans book and the Stormcast book. Then our War Scroll rules, some Path to Glory rules, and our match play rules. All right, so if you're looking for major changes in here, there aren't a lot. Forgotten Nightmares is pretty much the same. You can pick a Enclave from Yonrak, not Alarm, Morfan, Futhan, Domhain, and Brimdar, although the rules have changed fairly significantly. Friendly Idoneth Deepkin units can only be picked as the target of the shooting attack if they are the close eligible target of the attacking model, so it's identical to how it was. Tides of Death, basically the same. You have your battle round 1, everything's in cover. Battle round 2, run and still shoot and charge. High Tide, in the battle round, the strike first effect from the core rules applies to Deepkin units. So you basically all have strike first. So there are ways to interrupt it, but you all get to fight, basically. And then Ebb Tide, you can fall back and shoot or charge, and then you repeat on battle round 5 or more. So you go back to Low Tide. So kind of exactly the same. They're giving you the universal special rule for strike first, which is just a way of streamlining it and making it 3rd edition compliant. Your Isharan rituals. So for your priests now, you do have priestly prayers. The rituals table, you have the Ritual of Creeping Mist. Friendly Deepkin units affected by Low Tide cannot be picked as the target of a shooting attack unless you're within 12. So that's kind of cool. So basically, you've got your first battle round after the players receive their starting command point. But before the start of the first turn, if your army includes any Ishran unit, you can pick one of the following Ishran rituals to influence the Ether Sea. So this is, you had the Reverse Tides one before, now you have all of these that you can pick from, but you can only pick one. So the first one is, yeah, you just can't, unless you're within 12, you just can't shoot anybody if you're affected by Low Tide. The second one, add 1 to run and charge rules for friendly Idoneth Deepkin units affected by Flood Tide. So that's basically going to be on battle round 2, you get +1 to run and charge. Ritual of Deep Sight, Namardi get a ward save during High Tide of 5+. So in the 3rd battle round, you get a 5+ ward on your Namardi. I mean, cool. I just don't see people taking huge Namardi units. And then Ritual of the Spiteful Riptide, before friendly Deepkin unit that's affected by Ebb Tide retreats, roll a die for each enemy unit within 3. On a 4+, the enemy suffers D3 mortal wounds. So these are on top of the reverse orders thing. And are additional Ishran rituals, basically, if you have any Ishran units. So these are like the secret agents of the Deepkin go out and they pick a thing to have influence the tide table. So command traits, traits of the Kellyanne hero general only, born from agony. Now, no longer +2 wounds, although I loved that one. At the end of every battle shock phase, you can roll a die for this general. On a 6+, heal all their wounds. I mean, +2 wounds was amazing because there's a lot of like narrow wound characters, like 5 wound characters. So having a 7 wound Tidecast or something like that, it just kept them alive from like a single round of shooting usually. But on a 6, heal all your wounds. I mean, on a 5-turn game, at the end of it, sorry, you're gonna get 10 chances at this because it's the end of the battle shock phase. So during your opponent's turn and your turn, roll a die. On a 6, heal all your wounds. I think the only problem with it is it requires you to be wounded to have an effect, and it's a 1 in 6 chance of working. So it just isn't as good as it used to be unless it's on a very high wound character. So Born from Agony is probably cool on an Eidolon, just with 12 wounds, you know what I mean? You're gonna get wounded more often and then have a chance to get all your wounds back. And it could be clutch, but just flat +2 wounds was way better. Lord of the Sea and Storm, no battle shock for Idoneth Deepkin with 12 of the general, Holy Within. An Unstoppable Fury. While this general is affected by High Tide from Tides of Death, for every enemy unit within 3 of them during the combat phase, they get +2 attacks to their melee weapons until the end of the phase. So during High Tide, if you have Unstoppable Fury, your Eidolon, for instance, would make like 6 Spear of Refreshed Fury attacks and then 6 Cruel Hook attacks, which when you see his changed stat line is pretty great. And that's for each unit within 3. So if you run into like a cluster of characters, you could have like 12 attacks. Hunter of Souls. At the start of the combat phase, if this general is within 3 inches of an enemy hero or enemy unit champion, you can roll a die. On a 3+, the hero champion takes D3 mortal wounds. That's an interesting one for an Ishran character because like being able to kill a unit champion out of a unit and target them is weird. So like, and also like the hero thing, whatever, you can target a hero, but a unit champion just taking D3 mortal wounds on a 3+ at start of the combat phase is just like a weird trait, and a lot of unit champions are very important for their units. Now some units just don't have unit champions, but yeah, that could be, it could be very useful basically. You'd have to charge into the hero, but you could just like pop it out of the unit. Merciless Raiders, if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made by this general is a 6, it auto wounds. And Teachings of the Turskoll. So this is the other one that you used to get basically for taking the Ishran hero, the Tidecaster rather. If this general is on the battlefield at the start of the first battle round before priority is determined, you can declare the Tides of Death table be reversed. So it's the old reversed Tides table. But it's a trait now for your Ishran hero. So basically what's cool about that is any of the Ishran heroes can take it. So it's not just the Tidecaster, and you get one of those rituals at the start of the game as well. Traits of the Eidolons, you get your Ancient Pride. This incarnation of Mathland fights with the stubborn pride of 1,000 Idoneth souls. So like, because you don't have generic ones now, we've locked out Born from Agony from the Eidolons. So it would have been cool, I guess is what I should have said before on the Eidolon. You can't take it, it's a Kellyanne's only. And your general is going to have 7 wounds if he's a Kellyanne King. I don't think any of the other ones are Kellyans. The Thrall Master, no, I don't think it's he might be a Kellyanne. But it just basically means that your guy with 7 wounds is going to maybe get his wounds back. Ancient Pride, if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made by this melee weapon is 1 or 2, the attack sequence fails and the attack and it ends. So basically, you best hit him on a 3+. The Nightmare Legacy, aspect of the storm only. At the end of the charge phase, you can pick a general to carry out a monstrous rampage, even though it's not a monster. So basically, you can take your aspect of the storm and make him a monster, even though they're not a monster. And then Aspect of the Sea only, if this general successfully casts a spell that is not unbound with a modified roll of an unmodified roll of 7+, they're going to cast an extra spell that phase. So 1 for everybody, Martial Pride, best you can hit them on is a 3, or Ancient Pride, sorry, and then 1 for each of the 2 aspects. And they're not bad. I mean, not being able to take, where is it? The Hunter of, this one, Unstoppable Fury on your Eidolon, not great, but I mean, it means that your general could have, like, because his polearm and Falchion, Great Blade or whatever, are just as hitty, basically, as the Eidolon is. So, cool, but not amazing. The Eidolons become a lot less interesting, I guess, based on the fact that they don't have access to just as many command traits. So, there isn't 6 command traits, there's like 3 per hero type. So it's a bit shallower command trait-wise. I think before it was just command traits, and then there was a Kellyanne and Ishran on top of that. I think there was 18 before. I could be wrong though. And then your Kellyanne artifacts. So again, locked to a Kellyanne heroes. Once per battle at the start of the hero phase, pick 2 enemy heroes within 12 of the bearer. Your opponent must then choose one of the following options. Roll a die for each hero you pick. On a 3+, take a mortal wound. Roll a die for each hero you pick. On a 5+, take D3 mortal wounds. And each hero you pick suffers D3 mortal wounds. Then on a roll a dice on a 4+, the bearer suffers D3 mortal wounds. So basically, you pick 2 enemy heroes within 12 of you, and then your opponent has to pick one of those things. So your opponents could just take a bunch of mortal wounds, and then you could also take them. There's a lesser chance of taking D3, or they could all just take 1 on a 3+. I don't love that one, because you don't really know what it's going to do. Potion of Hateful Frenzy. Once per battle at the start of your hero phase, you can say the bearer will drink this potion. If you do so until the end of the turn, add 1 to hit rolls and wound rolls for attacks made by the bearer, and add 1 to the attack characteristic of their melee weapons, and add 1 to the run rolls and charge rolls. So you combine that with Unstoppable Fury on High Tide, and your Kellyanne King could be super good. However, at the start of the next hero phase, you take D3 mortal wounds and can't pile it until the end of the turn. So, again, I don't love that one. And then Armor of the Scythe. If the unmodified hit roll for an attack that targets the bearer is a 6, all effects triggered by that roll would be ignored. That one's amazing. There's so many things that have 6+ mortal wound triggers or auto wound triggers, or, I mean, anything. Like, just think about, what are they called? Vanguard Raptors with long strike crossbows. Like, nope, you don't get your mortal wounds. Sorry. That's amazing. So all effects that are triggered by the roll are ignored. Turns everything to normal hits, basically. with how like random these ones are, I feel like the Armor of Scythe, unless you're gonna give him a generic item, is just kind of automatic. I mean, I guess there's an argument to turn him into a torpedo with Potion of Hateful Frenzy. Your Ishran ones, Dritch Leech. Subtract 1 from casting rolls, unbinding rolls, and dispelling rolls for enemy wizards within 18 of the bear. Has no effect on your Idoneth units. Rune of the Surging Gloomtide. Once per battle at the end of your movement phase, you can say this bear will summon a Gloomtide shipwreck. If you do so, you can set up 1 shipwreck wholly within 12 of the bear and more than 3 from all their models, objectives, other trained features, endless spells, invocations, and add it to your army. Now, the shipwreck is very different. It's quite different. It's simpler, to be honest, which I kind of like, but it's very different. Brain Barnacles, once per battle at the start of your hero phase, you can pick 1 enemy hero within 12 of the bear and roll 2d6. If the roll in inches is equal to or greater than the distance between the bear and the enemy hero, subtract 1 from hit rolls and wound rolls for that enemy hero for the rest of the battle. Basically, you shoot Brain Barnacles at him, and then he's all confused and can't hit. I mean, I guess. Like, it's hard. It's funny because it's kind of hard to compete with the generic magic items. Like, Arcane Tome for a cast on a non-wizard is so much better than other things. Because you're effectively buying a bunch of versatility and either Mortal Wounds or a Flaming Weapon or, you know, like +1 save for Arcane Shield. It's hard to compete with that. If you're taking 2 items, then maybe some of these are worth taking. Your Eidolon artifacts, so the Eidolon ones. I mean, if you're not giving him Arcane Tome if he's not a wizard, I don't know. If you've taken the Storm one, I don't know why. Bioshock spell, or shell, once per battle at the start of your combat phase, you can say you'll use your Bioshock shell and turn into a big daddy. If you do so, pick an enemy hero within 9 of the bear, invisible, and roll 3d6. If the roll is greater than that enemy hero's bravery characteristic, the strike last effect applies to the enemy hero until the end of the phase. So you basically slow somebody down. The Whirl Shell. Once per battle at the start of the combat phase, you can say the bear will unleash the power of the Whirl Shell. If you do so until the end of the phase, an unmodified hit roll for an attack made with a melee weapon that targets the bear as a 1 or 2, attack fails and the attack sequence ends. So you can either buy that as a command trait all the time with Ancient Pride, for just melee weapons, I guess, or all attacks? No, it's still just melee weapons. So I guess if you wanted to take the other one, then you could still get a once per game version of it. Kraken Tooth, once per battle in your shooting phase, you can pick 1 enemy unit within 12 of the bear that is visible and roll a die. Then look up the result below. On a 1, none binds the Kraken. The bear takes D3 mortal wounds. 2 to 5, the Kraken is released. The target takes D3 mortal wounds. And number 6, a tasty morsel. Pick a model from the target unit. If that unit model has a wound characteristic of less than 10, it's slain. If it's more than 10, it takes D6 mortal wounds. So basically, you unleash the Kraken on them. I mean, what? The Kraken is released? Why isn't that unleash the Kraken? Like, come on, guys. You had a chance for a reference in there. Just lean in. That's all I'm asking. Mount traits. So your Deep Mirrors and Leviodons can have one of the following mount traits, and these are for both of them. So Swiftfin Impaler, Deep Turn only. If you use your Deep Mirror Horn roll a 6, it's D6 mortal wounds instead of D3. Savage Ferocity, +1 attacks to your Fangs and Lashing Tail. And then Void Chill Darkness, -1 to hit for attacks made by enemy units within 3 of this unit, which I still think is the best one. Ancient for your Leviodon, Rends of -1 are changed to dash. Denizen of the Crushing Depths, Leviodon only, subtract 1 from wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons that target this that have a damage characteristic of 1. And Reverberating Carapace, the Void Drums goes from 12 to 15. These are all basically the same as the Marathi ones. I think the Ancient one is still the best. Because your shell cracks as you get worse, so starting with a 2+ save and keeping it against -1 is a huge deal. And there isn't a lot of like -2, -3 in this game. There is some, but there's more -1 than anything else. And then your spell lures, there are only 4 spells. Only 4, which is weird. There's usually 6. Steed of Tides, cast on 5, range 6. Pick a friendly hero that's not a monster, and that is within range invisible to the caster. I'm pretty sure the Eidolon's still not a monster, because you have to take a thing to do a rampage. Remove them from the battlefield and set them up anywhere in the battlefield more than 9 from all enemy units. A unit can't move in the movement phase. The Counter Current. It's a spell that has a casting value of 6 and a range of 18. If cast, pick an enemy unit within range invisible. Until your next hero phase, have their run and charge rolls. Pressure of the Deep. Cast on 7, range 12. Pick an enemy model within range of the visible of the caster and roll a die. If it's greater than their wound characteristic, they pop and are slain. Again, a great way of killing unit leaders and stuff. Or even just low wound, like Gubapalooza, like lots of little low wound character models that run around. Arcane Corrasion. Arcane Corrasion is a spell that has a casting value of 6 and a range of 12. If cast, pick an enemy unit within range invisible to the caster. Worsen the Rend characteristic of that unit's melee weapons by 1 until your next hero phase. So that's it. Yeah, funny. I mean, there are all of the generic ones too, so they've kind of intentionally, it seems, shallowed and split up the artifacts, mount traits, and spell lores a bit. So our Enclave. So basically what you get now for Enclave is just an ability. It's a lot like the ones for, whatchamacallit, Stormcast, where it's a fairly short list. So, and also you unlock a bunch of new battle line choices. So kicking it off with Yanrak, we have the original sort of like OG Enclave, where Volturnus is from. His whole thing is Legacy of Glory. It's an additional heroic action, and you can take it with a friendly Yanrak, a Kellyanne hero, instead of any other heroic action. And if you do so, pick a Yanrak, a Kellyanne unit wholly within 12 until the end of the turn. You can choose them to be affected by either Flood Tide or Ebb Tide, in addition to any other Tides of Death abilities they're currently affected by. So basically what that means is they can fall back and still shoot a charge, or run and still shoot a charge. So you could make a first turn like Leviodon charge potentially, because it's Yanrak, or it's Kellyanne rather, or your eels could go in and do it. And it's, you know, it could even be himself. You could send the Kellyanne King in and have him do a first turn charge or a fallback and charge during the turn. So not quite as cool as our allies get, like you have a Stormcast Annihilator unit that all gets to use the Tides of Battle, which would be super cool, but still kind of neat. Not a lot, and they get no additional battle line choices, by the way. Nautilus Crushing Assault. Now this is where we get Leviodon's as battle line, because why not have a 500-point battle line choice? Did you just want to play a weird version of Mega Gargants? Because you can. And it's kind of almost worth it. You can carry out this Monstrous Rampage with a friendly Nautilus Leviodon unit instead of any other Monstrous Rampage. If you do so, the Rend characteristic of that Leviodon's massive sized fins and Crushing Jaws is -3 until the end of the next combat phase. So you can get a -3 AP. Morphan, Soul Magic Adepts. If the Lure Light ability of a friendly Soul Render affects a friendly Namarti unit, add 3 to their slain models instead of just 1. So you get to bring back more Namarti. So we've got, I guess, everything or Kellyans. We've got take Leviodons. We've got take lots of Namarti. Then we have Futhan. Now they have a thing called a Bloodthirsty Shiver, and they also make Alopexes battle lines. So if you wanted to have an all-shark army, you could do that. You can include Bloodthirsty Shivers in your army. At the start of the combat phase, you can pick a unit from each Bloodthirsty Shiver in your army. If you do so, and a Bloodthirsty Shiver is a separate unit type of 3 Alopexes taken as a single choice for like 500 points. Sorry, you can pick 1 unit from the Shiver in your army. And it's from each Shiver, so if you somehow have more than 1. If you do so until the end of that phase, if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made by its ferocious bites is 6, it does 2 hits instead of 1. Make a wound and save for each. If you attack units within 3 inches of 1 or more units from the same Bloodthirsty Shiver, it's 3 hits on a modified roll of 6 instead. So you kind of have to lean into this ability, take lots of Alopexes, and then basically at the start of the combat phase, one of your sharks can get +3 hits for every 6. And then Domhain, Namarti Savages. If you take the first turn in the current battle round, in your combat phase, after a friendly Domhain Namarti unit fought for the first time, if there's no enemies within 3, you can attempt to charge if they're within 12 of the enemy. If it finishes its charge move within ½ inch, you can pick that unit to fight for a second time that phase when it's your turn to do so. If you take the second turn in the current battle round, when a friendly Domhain hero issues the redeploy command to a friendly Domhain unit, you can pick 3 Domhain Namarti to receive the command instead of just 1. So this one's kind of interesting. It lets you have basically, if you choreograph it right, so something in the opponent's army fights, you've got a Namarti unit that's fighting something it's probably going to wipe out. Then that Namarti unit, after they kill it, can immediately charge the already fought unit and then go again. So it's fairly clutch, but being able to take 2 fight actions, potentially charge something that's already fought during the turn so you can't get hit back, could be a big deal. And it's only if you take the first turn in the current battle round in your combat phase. So, and in your combat phase, not your opponent. So you have to get to go first. There's like a lot of things that need to happen to pull it off, but it could be cool. And then if you take the second turn, you can redeploy 3 units instead of 1. So you can basically use it defensively or offensively. I don't know, it's neat, but it's definitely not, like that's what I'm saying, you don't build your army around your Enclave here. These are all kind of clutch things that could happen. At Briamdar, Supreme Soul Scryers. During deployment, if you set up a friendly Briamdar Soul Scryer unit, using the Finder of the Ways ability, up to 3 friendly Briamdar Undead Deepkin units can join them, instead of just 2. In addition, when you set up any units that join the Soul Scryer, you can set up those units wholly within 12 of that Soul Scryer and more than 9 from the enemy. So basically, the Soul Scryer's ability now is like a ambush. He leaves the table, and you get to put up to 2 units with him. This one allows you to do a third, and you can be set up within, I think, 12 instead of 9. So it increases the range at which they can set up near him, and the amount of units that can go with him. So it's neat for battlefield kind of like control and being able to have board presence. And honestly, of them all, the Nautilor one's probably the coolest. It's situational, but you really might want to have -3 rend at some point if you're taking the Leviodon. The Yonrak one probably has the most utility, and the other ones you really have to lean into to make good. You know what I mean? They require like prerequisite units and a lot of like setup to do. The Morphan one requires you to take a Soul Render. This one requires a Soul Scryer. This one requires you to take Alopexes as battle line, and then take the Shiver as well. You have to take the 500 point unit of 3. And then this one requires you basically to have a whole bunch of Namarti and then set up the turn perfectly to make it sort of pay off. Path to Glory. So a Quota of Souls. You're basically trying to get souls back. I love the story of this. And then when you make your quota, you get bonuses to your casualty rolls and stuff like that. You can take your various quests. Cool veteran abilities like Soul Harvesters. Use this once per battle at the start of the combat phase. When it does so, increase your soul quota by 1 for each enemy model slain. Your different territories, a pitch black abyss. Who doesn't want to live there? A concealed whirlway, an undersea volcano. Now, who doesn't want to have? What supervillain doesn't want to live in an undersea volcano? Every supervillain, and also it's the best. it's the best of all things. And then an Idoneth Deepkin name generator. And my favorite thing about this whole book so far is names for all the little weird animals. Look at it. We got a Dredgeleech, a Moon Orbilar, a Malefic Screet. I want to be a Malefic Screet. I'm going to call my next cat Malefic Screet. Shrask Eel, a Snapping Brawn. Look, it's Shellington. Shellington has a name now. He's a Snapping Brawn. A Phantasma Ray, a Hippocampus. That's just a stolen name for the brain. A Juvenile Quad Tear, a Whirl Scuttle, a Direbrine Angler, a Shellforge Crab. I like that one too. And a Zephyrfish. I love that there are names for all the little fish. That makes me super happy. Your Bespoke Battle Plan. And then the match play rules and your War Scroll Battalion. So again, War Scroll Battalion is basically a giant one. You take a phalanx and it requires these 3 War Scroll Battalions. So a Royal Council, which is an Kellyanne Kings, Tidechester, and Soul Scryer rather. A Kellyanne Corps, which is a Leviodon, 2 to 4 units of Guard, which is the Mounted Eels, and then 1 to 2 Alopexes. And then a Namarti Corps, so a Thrallmaster Soul Render, and then 2 to 6 Thralls and 2 to 6 Reavers. 2 to 4 Reavers, sorry. And then when you're affected by High Tide and you make a charge move, you can pick an enemy unit within 1 and roll number of dice equal to your charge roll, and a 5+ take a mortal wound. So you basically get a better Ogre charge during your High Tide. All right, grand strategies. I don't know. There isn't an obviously good one here, I don't think. So you have a Kellyanne Pursuit. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if you're 3 or more friendly Kellyanne units wholly within enemy territory. So if you're leading into eels, I guess that's a good one. The Creeping Gloomtide. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if there's any Gloomtide shipwrecks in your army on the battlefield and all of them are more than 3 from the enemy units. So basically, defend your shipwreck. Dominion of the Deep ones. When the battle ends, complete this grand strategy if the only monsters still alive in the battlefield are friendly Leviodons. And Namarti Assault. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if 2 or more friendly Namarti units within 3 of any enemy units. Or if the only battle line units on the battlefield are friendly Namarti units. So good luck with that one. Namarti are glass tissue paper. I think if you're going to take one that isn't just like hold the line, because you do have a ton of battle line choices, so the potential for having a starting battle line choice on the table is probably higher than, like, for instance, the Namarti Assault one. The Creeping Gloomtide one is probably the easiest, because you just have to keep people off your Gloomtide shipwreck. That one feels the easiest. If you're playing all eels, maybe a Kellyanne Pursuit, but you still have to have 3 units alive. and people are going to try and kill your Leviodon. So unless you're playing all Leviodons, then that one's probably not great either. The Creeping Gloomtide is probably the one you might take that isn't generic. And then your battle tactics for Idoneth Deepkin armies only. Assassins of the High Tide. You complete this battle tactic if 2 or more enemy units are destroyed by attacks made by friendly Idoneth Deepkin during High Tide. Predators of the Deep. Pick 1 unit from your opponent's starting army that has a wound characteristic of 8 or more and more than 10 and 0 wounds allocated, sorry. You complete this tactic if it's destroyed during the turn by an Alopex unit. So basically take something that's unwounded, has more than 8 wounds, and that one's so situational, and then kill it with Alopexes. Revenge of the Namarti. Complete this battle tactic if an enemy hero or monster is destroyed during that turn by an attack made by a Namarti unit. That one could definitely work because your 2 wound sword swings are pretty great. Deny Trespassers. Pick a Gloomtide shipwreck in your army that's more than 12 from any enemy units. You complete this battle tactic if that Gloomtide shipwreck is more than 12 from all enemy units at the end of the turn. Oh, and sorry, I should have mentioned, that one's great, and also Creeping Gloomtide. You can use non-starting Gloomtide shipwrecks, and you can summon them. So those 2 right there are actually great for a bunch of reasons, based upon the fact purely that you can just bring them out. You can even spell portal them to somewhere in the battlefield that's completely away from the enemy. That's like a last turn thing. You know what I mean? Like there's a bunch of ways of getting that off that are very handy. And I mean, we're talking about 5, 6, 7 victory points right there. And you complete this battle. Sorry, pick a. But the Deny Trespassers, it has to start within 12 of the enemy, and then complete the battle tactic if it's more than 12 from all enemy units at the end of the turn. But again, not starting Gloomtide shipwrecks, so it could be any one. So you could just summon it next to 1 model, basically, within 12, and then pop that 1 model with like something like Crushing Deep or whatever. And then Trapped in the Undercurrents. You complete this battle tactic if 3 or more friendly Idoneth Deepkin units retreated and charged in the same turn. An Isharan Defiance. That one's actually really easy for Riptide and also for if you have an Eidolon, because you can just fall back and charge. And then Ishran Defiance. When you reveal this battle tactic, pick an objective wholly within enemy territory. At the start of this turn, you complete this battle tactic if you control that objective, and there's a friendly Ishran unit within 6 of that objective. All right, so let's get into it. We got some War Scrolls here. The Eidolon, Aspect of the Storm. What have you changed to? Well, not much. Core stats are exactly the same. Spear of Fresh Fury in melee, 2-inch range, 4 attacks, 3s and 2s, -2/2 damage. He's kind of identical to how he was, except his Cruel Hook is 4 attacks, 3s and 2s, -1, 2 damage now instead of 1. So both attacks doing 2 damage. Sharp Fangs on his Fish Shoal, 2d6 attacks, 4s and 4s, 1 damage. Kind of exactly the same. Storm Shoal is a 5+ ward. Crashing on the foe, heal D3 when you charge, +1 attack and damage when you're fighting your spear during a charge, and retreat and charge in the same turn. Drenched with Hate, +1 to wound for attacks made with melee weapons by friendly Deepkin units, excluding mounts that are wholly within 12. So no more getting +1 to wound on your guns from having the guy nearby. And then Pulled into the Depths, at the start of the combat phase, pick a hero with less than 8 wounds and within 3, and you get +1 to hit and wound rolls if you target that hero. So baby heroes just get stomped on again. All right, Aspect of the Sea. He gets same core stats yet again. Blasts of Abyssal Energy. Exact same. Oh, sorry, lost some range. 3 inches down in range, 12-inch range. D3 shots, 3s and 3s, -2/2 damage. His Psy Trident. I don't know why that makes me laugh. Probably because there was a Canadian TV show called Psy Factor that was like a poor man's X-Files. And wherever you're Psy, I think of Dan Aykroyd introducing it. It is 3 attacks, 3s and 3s, -2/2 damage. That's what you come here for, is the obscure Canadian sci-fi TV references. The Deep Sea Scepter, I've thrown myself off. Lost an attack. Went down to 2 attacks, 3s and 4s instead of 3s and 3s, -1/1 damage. Oh, his Scepter got weaker. And then Sharp Fangs are the same. He's got Cast 2, Dispel 2. His Storm Shoal is a 5+ save. Dormant Energies, reroll casting, dispelling, and unbinding rolls all the time. If this hero successfully casts any spells in your hero phase, you can heal up to D3 wounds. Tranquility of the Abyss. All Idoneth within 18 of him have a bravery of 10. And then Cloying Sea Mists. Cloying Sea Mist is a spell that casts on a 6 and a range of 12. If cast, pick a friendly Idoneth Deepkin unit or 1 enemy unit within range invisible. If you pick Idoneth, they heal D3 wounds allocated, and if you pick an enemy, they take D3 mortal wounds. Very cool utility spell. And then Tsunami of Terror, cast on 7, range 12. If cast, pick D3 enemy units within range invisible to the caster. Subtract 1 from save rolls for attacks made with melee weapons. Then target that unit until the next hero phase. So basically, it's not +1 save, but it's -1. Yeah, so it's not. It doesn't increase your rend, so it's not a mod. It's subtract 1 from save rolls. Subtract 1 from save rolls for attacks made with melee weapons. D3 enemy units get -1 to their save, basically. But it's not a rend, so it can stack with rend, which is interesting. And it's D3 units. I like that one too. It's just worded so strangely. And again, you can be 3 casts if you take him as a general and you get a 7+ for unmodified casting roll. There's the ability to you basically get a 3rd cast out of it, which is cool. All right, Volturnus, what did you get, buddy? It looks like you got an extra wound. Oh, I think you always had an extra wound over the big guy. Yeah, of course, that's the same, except your bravery went to 10. That's cool. The Astra Solus lost an attack, but gained a rend. And it's flat damage 3. So I think that's fair. I'll take flat 3 damage, 4 attacks, 3s and 3s -2. Yep, I'm fine with that. And then Fang, Jaws, and Talons. 3 attacks, 3s and 3s -1, but D3 damage now, which is cool. Then you have the Lashing Tail. 3 attacks, 3s and 3s, no rend, 2 damage. Flies. He's a mount. Each time you're affected by a spell or abilities and end the spell, on a 3+, you can ignore it. First among Kellyans, add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by Kellyanne units, wholly within 12. Deepmere Horn, 2+ D3 mortal wounds. Supreme Lord of Tides. Once per battle at the start of the combat phase, you can pick 3 different friendly Idoneth Deepkin units that are affected by High Tide. And are wholly within 12, add 1 of their attack characteristics of their melee weapons. So, kind of the same. I mean, his flat 3 damage is very cool. His bravery 10 is very cool. The Kellyanne King's also bravery 10 now. He's effectively just a little slightly worse than Volturnus. So his bladed polearm went to flat 2 damage instead of D3 and stayed the same but gained a point to wound. He's wounding on 2+ now. The greatsword's 5 attacks instead of 4. 3s and 3s -1, 2 damage. Still think that's probably better. Oh, the bladed polearm is probably a bit more reliable. Falchion, if he makes his all-out attack, he gets those attacks. They are basically the same, except they wound on 3s instead of 4s now. Fangs and Talons and Lashing Tail are the same as Volturnus's. And he's in a Kellyanne Paragon, just a reduced range, 9-inch range for +1 to hit for melee weapons, but only melee weapons, so it doesn't work on your guns. And there's a reason for that later. Deepmere Horn's the same. Wave Rider. The bladed polearm is a rend of -3 and damage 3 if they charge in the same turn, which makes the polearm really good. So it's 9 potential damage basically, and rend -3. And then Lord of Tides, it's D3 units instead of 3, but it's the same as Volturnus's. So both cool. Kellyanne King's a bit cheaper, but if you can take Volturnus, why not just take Volturnus? Because he's awesome. He is, of course, going to be on rack, but I mean, I'll be honest, unless you're unlocking Battleline with it, I don't feel like it matters super much what your Enclave is. Now, Ishran Dagaster. So again, can take, if you make him general, they can reverse the tides. But actually any of these guys can do it. 4+ save, hooray! Everyone's saves aren't garbage. The biggest change here is just the 4+ save. 1 more bravery. Pelagic Staff, hits on 4s now, but does flat 2 damage with a -1 rend. Your fish got a bite, 2 attacks, 3s and 4s, 1 damage. 5+ ward save. Literally everybody got a 5+ ward save, which I think is amazing. Cast 1, unbind 1. Master of the Ether Sea. If any units in this ability are part of your army, you can pick 2 rituals instead of 1 for the start of the game, which is kind of cool. So you get 2 bonus things during the tides. And then Riptide, cast on 7, range 18. Pick an enemy unit within range invisible. They take D3 mortal wounds, and they're -1 to hit. Still very cool. The Tidecaster, I think, is a great wizard choice if you're not taking Arcane Tome. It's just all around good. 5 wounds with a 5+ ward now, fantastic. Double rituals, fantastic. Riptide is a great spell. just because it's got a decent range, casts on 7, does mortal wounds, and makes you -1 to hit. That's a really good spell. Lotan, Papa Lotan, still awesome. He got so cheap for a while. He's a bit more expensive now, but still good. 4+ save, bravery 8. He always had the 5+ ward, but you know, still has it. Cataloger of Souls, +1 to wound rolls for attacks made by melee weapons by Deepkin. It's wholly within 12. So another Drenched in Hate doesn't just work on Marty now, works on everybody. You're going to find that's a theme, actually. A Fountain of Willpower. Once per battle, if this unit is on the battlefield at the start of your hero phase, you can pick 1 ritual from the Ishran Rituals table and 1 friendly Idoneth Deepkin unit wholly within 12, and they can be affected by it in addition to extra the other rituals. So basically, double rituals here, potentially another whole extra ritual. So Lotan's got some cool stuff. And +1 to wound with an aura. He's not as cheap as I think he's 90 points before. He's gone up a little bit. To Papa Lotan, where are you at? Lotan. 115. But a 12-inch +1 to wound bubble is sweet. With melee weapons. Again, none of this affects shooting because there were some unintentional buffs, I think, to the shooting. The Soul Scryer, who was largely not used, I mean, at least by me. I haven't even painted mine. Gets his 4+ save, gets a bravery. Spike Jaws on his fish. 8 attacks, 2s and 4s, -1/1 damage as a missile weapon. So it has a gun, but it's only 12-inch range now. Better to hit, better to wound. Just got better overall. Finger Claw. 3 attacks, 3s and 3s, 1 damage. How is that Finger Claw a weapon? And then Finder of the Ways. This is the one where you basically pick an item at the Deepkin unit during deployment, and you can say it's traveling the ways. Up to 2 units can go with him. At the end of your movement phase, you can set this up wholly within 6 of the battlefield edge and more than 9 from enemy units. If you do so, set up all the units wholly within 9 of this unit and more than 9 from the enemy. So if you take that extra thing, it's 12 inches instead of 9 from him. And then a 5+ ward. And then your Soul Render. This guy got, again, slightly better. 4+ save, 5 wounds, bravery 8. He's actually identical. He always had those stats. His Talon Hook is 4 attacks now, 3s and 3s, -1/2 damage, doubled its attack rate. And the Fish's Serrated Bill, 3 attacks instead of D3, 3s and 3s, -1/1 damage. Has its Lure Light at the end of the Battle Shock phase, so both. Pick a friendly Namarti unit wholly within 18 of this unit and return D3 models to it. You can return 3 if anyone was killed by the Talon Hook during the same turn. The same unit can only be affected by the Lure Light once per turn. So like, you can't lure, multiple guys can't Lure Light the same unit. But if he's in the front and killing stuff, he gets 3 guys back per turn, which kind of makes up for your glassiness, but you're investing in this guy to do it. Hangman's Knot. Once per battle at the end of the combat phase, pick an enemy model with a wound characteristic of 7 or less that does not have a mount, and it's within 3 of the unit, and roll 2d6. If the roll is greater than their wounds characteristic, they're slain. So basically, if you can hard roll an 8 and this guy's within 3, that guy's dead. And then a 5+ ward. That could be worth it to kill a unit champion, kill like a Varangar. There's a lot of like 4 to 5 wound models that you could just pop that way. Ogres, lots of like ogre unit champions and stuff you just pop. And then Elathane the Ill-Fated. This is the Underworld's character. Did you change it all? Elathane the Ill-Fated. Same core stats. The Talon Sickle and Soul Net gain an attack, 3s and 3s, -1/2 damage, so +1 attack. And the Envenomed Bite is identical. If the unmodified hit roll for an attack move, the Envenomed Bite's a 6, you get a mortal wound, and the attack sequence ends. The Lure Light, same as the one on the other guy. And then Soul Net, once per battle end of the combat phase, you can pick an enemy model with a wound characteristic of 7 or less and pop it, and a 5+ ward. He's basically just another Soul Render, like a named Soul Render. And then Soul Raid, I was so hoping they would give me the Knights on Foot. I really wanted that. They didn't, obviously. They all have 1 wound. The Riptide Harpoon has a 9-inch range. Everybody's armed with a different weapon. They're kind of just the same. Yeah, they didn't change at all. Doesn't look like. Crushing Claws on the Crab are still 2 attacks, 4s and 2s, -1/1 damage. And Fuiran has a ward save of 6+. So this guy's got a 6+ ward. Everybody else just dies. All right, Ishran Guard. Except for the fish, these are pretty much the same. Where are you at, Ishran Guard? Soul Render, Tidecaster, Morser Guard, Ishran Guard. 4 wounds, 4+ save, Bravery 7 instead of 6 now, which is nice, 14-inch move. Your Hell Saber is still 3 attacks, 3s and 3s, but -1 rend now, and 1 damage. So I got a bit more rend. And they kind of combined the Maw and Lashing Tail into one thing. It's just 3 attacks, 3s and 3s, -1 D3 damage. So a lot easier to keep track of, but the net damage output is probably the same. They're not going to be potentially 9 attacks. They had 7 to 9 attacks before with the random attack number, but it was all 1 damage, whereas now it's 6 attacks, but half of them are D3 damage. Same stats otherwise. You have your Prince, gets +1 attack, Standard Bearer gets +1 bravery, and Musician gets +1 at charge rolls. And then your Biovoltaic Barrier, I'll get there, is the same. Ignore modifiers positive and negative to save rolls for attacks that target this unit. And in addition, this unit has a save characteristic of 3+ instead of 4 when they make a charge. Yeah, but you can still Mystic Shield them because it's just for the attacks that target this unit. Sorry, no, it's not. Ignore modifiers positive and negative to save rolls for attacks that target this unit. Yeah, I guess that's going to be, you can't Mystic Shield them anymore. So they're 4+, 3+, and that's it. And no rerolls. A Kellyanne Morser Guard, same thing with the Eels, except they lost an attack on the Volt Spear. So it's 2 attacks, 3s and 3s, no rend, 1 damage. Fangs and Lashing Tail are the same as the other guys, so 3 attacks, 3s and 3s, -1 D3 damage. Same command abilities, same extra bravery. And then Biovoltaic Blast. Once per battle, after this unit makes a charge move, you can say this unit will unleash its blast. If you do so, you can pick an enemy unit that is within one of this unit and roll a number of dice equal to the number of models in this unit. For every 4+, take a mortal wound. For every 6, they take D3 instead. And add 1 to the roll if the number of models in that enemy unit is greater than the number of models in this unit. So basically, as long as you're outnumbered, you're doing mortals on a 3+, 5+ for D3s. And then Wave Riders, your Voltaic Spears have a rend of -2 and a damage of 2 if you charge. So, pretty, like, functionally, probably the same damage output. Although the rules for the mounts have changed a little bit. Alopexes, these are the same as in Fire and Fury, so I don't really need to go over them. I still think the Razor Shell Harpoon Launcher is better. The Nopalin's neat, I just think the other one's better. And then your Leviodon, again, pretty much the same, except the Razor Shell Harpoon Launcher now has 8 attacks at 3s and 3s, -1, and D3 damage, which is bananas. I'm pretty sure that's new. I've played with my Leviodon like twice. Yup, D3 damage. So no big deal, just a potential multiplication from 8 damage with its guns to 24 damage. I mean, it's random, but that's a lot of damage, which is probably why they removed all of the damage buffs to the thing. Crushing Jaws are 2 attacks. Yep, still 2s and 2s, -2, 3 damage. Side fins go from 4 damage down to 1 at the bottom bracket. Save is the same, 2+ goes to 5+ at the bottom bracket. 6 stacks, 3s and 3s. Crushing Charge, 2+ does D3 mortal wounds. If it's 1 wound characteristic model, it does D6 instead of D3. So when you do a Monstrous Rampage, if the wound characteristic is 1, it does D6 mortal wounds instead of D3. Jaws of Death, unmodified hit roll for Crushing Jaws is a 6, it does 3 mortal wounds. And if the unmodified roll for a Crushing Jaws is a 6 and the target's a monster, it does 6 mortal wounds. And then Void Drum, add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target friendly Idoneth Deepkin units with a wound characteristic of 8 or less that are wholly within 12 of the friendly Leviodon. So no more gaining +1 save for your Eidolons. In addition, +1 hit rolls for Namarti units that target enemy unit that's wholly within 12 of friendly Leviodon. So basically, based on where the Leviodon is, you get bonuses to save and your guys. And you can use it to buff Namarti units. Thrall Master is the same as in, whatchamacallit, the Fire and Fury. So your fighting stances, pick a fighting stance for this unit to use. And I guess if you overlap them, they would work. But they would only go once. You wouldn't get to stack the bonuses, but you could have all 3 bonuses on different units. Wholly within 12, you had 3 Thrall Masters. The Thralls and Reavers are the same with the changes to the bows. The Namarti Reavers or Thralls are functionally the same. And your Gloomtide Shipwreck. All right, so setup. You can set up as 1 or 2 terrain features. They need to be anywhere in your territory. More than 3 from all objectives and terrain features. Both players set up faction terrain at the same time, roll off. If it's 1, it's 1 big piece. If it's 2, it's 2 big pieces. And they're separate faction terrain features. Defensible. If this terrain features, and remember, you can have all of those different rules that are associated with it too. It's defensible, and you can garrison it. So if it's small, 5 Idoneth with a wound characteristic of 5 or less can go into it. If it's big, 10 Idoneth with a characteristic of 5 or less can go into it. And then Guardians of the Deep, Idoneth units that do not have a mount have a ward save of 5+ while they're wholly within 6 of this terrain feature. If a unit that does not have the Idoneth Deepkin keyword is within 3 of the terrain feature, this ability has no effect. So, and the fish gets scared away basically. But you could stick Reavers in a full shipwreck now. They get a 5+ ward save, can shoot 18 out of it, and are garrisoning it. So they're gonna have a 4+ armor save, be -1 to hit, and have a 5+ ward, as long as stuff's away from it. So the shipwreck just got way better, I think. There aren't any 5-man infantry units really, so that sucks, but because your grand strategy can be based around it, that's kind of a thing now. All right, and then points. Reavers are 170 for 10, the Marties are 130 for 10, both battle line. Leviodon's 500, and battle line and Nautilus. Eidolons are 325 for the Sea and 355 for the Storm, both leaders, not behemoths. Volturnus is 290. Elthane and his posse are 210. Kellyanne Kings are 250. Kellyanne Thrallmasters are 110. Tidecasters and Soulscribes are both 150. Soul Renders are 120. Lotan's 115. Alopexes are 165 or 495 as a Shriver if you're taking them as a Futhan army, and battling in Futhan. And then a Kellyanne Morser Guard are 195, and battle line if they're generals and a Kellyanne King. 195 for Ishran as well, and 195, and then your Gloomtide Shipwreck's free. You can ally with Cities, Daughters, Lumineth, Stormcast, and Sylvaneth. And that's it. If I'm honest, the biggest thing that seems to have changed in here is access to the Gloomtide Shipwreck, the grand strategy, and how my magic items are going to play out, and my command traits. Not having a generic command trait and artifact list is kind of going to change I think the way some things got played, but I don't think functionally things aren't going to change on the tabletop too much. Your battle line still kind of plays the same way that it was. There's a few gimmick lists in here that I'm sure people are going to try. Everyone's going to, at some point, probably if they want to paint them, play through Leviodons. Is it going to be good? Maybe. I don't think so. Most of the things that made the Leviodons amazing at the point cost they were at before don't exist anymore. The book doesn't have any native way to reroll 1s, which was a huge holdover in their old book and old literature, although it was mostly drained out through the FAQs and the general changes to stuff. Its bonuses to wound don't apply to shooting anymore, which is a big thing that made the Alopexes and the Leviodon cool. Is you had this you could put them out front, make people shoot them, ignoring rend and all that stuff, and then your tides can also make it so that you can't shoot them outside of 12. There could have been some cool gimmicks, but your boosts don't really work the way they used to. +1 hits all basically in melee now. +1 wounds all basically in melee now. You don't have the ability to stand off and pick things apart before you engage that you used to. And the rush forward and fight reversing the tides could work. But again, we're talking about rushing forward and fighting high tide wise with things like your Thralls, your Reavers, your Eels. And your Eels kind of still work the exact same way as they did. Not having reroll 1s makes them cool, but not amazing. They have the mobility to get where they want and last. They can't be shot unless the closest target. So there's still the core things that were in the Idoneth book before that made them themselves. That ability to position units so your opponent has to attack them and other units are completely safe. It's still here, right? The Ishran units all became more interesting, but I don't know if that still makes them better than things like the Eidolon and the Kellyanne King. And if you're only taking 2 to 3 heroes now, as opposed to the full complement of 5 because you're trying to fit into a single drop, are you going to look at those baby heroes? Maybe, maybe not. You need to lean in and accept the fact that you're probably not going to get to go first or dictate the first battle round if you're going to make an army that it kind of takes advantage of all of the new changes and stuff like that. Having Alopexes as battle line could be interesting, but they're not cheaper necessarily than Thralls. They're a bit tougher, have less wounds overall because it's 8 compared to 10, I think. It might be 10 actually. They might have the exact same wound profile, which would make that argument moot. So if you're looking at taking a tougher unit, but then your model count is lower on objectives, the Alopexes, yeah, it is 8. They have 2 less wounds, but a better save. They don't have any built-in healing, whereas the Thralls can heal. And then things like the Reavers became way more interesting because they're always battle line now and can sit inside the Gloomtide Shipwreck, which functionally unlocks the ability to do 2 different two different whatchamacallits, two different battle tactic and a grand strategy if you want to. So you kind of have a castle now, which I think is neat. That kind of solves a battle line choice because the first shipwreck's free. You can summon more with casting, and you're getting a Thrall unit, which is the cheaper of the two. Sorry, actually the Reaver's the more expensive one. They're 170, whereas it's 165 for an Alopex. So if you want to lean into Thralls, they're relatively cheap. They do still hit like a ton of bricks if they actually get there, but they need to be protected by that maneuvering of like keeping the tougher stuff up front and either unable to be shot or, you know, like not targetable or, you know, like defensively positioned because of the tides and your rituals and stuff to keep them safe until they can get into combat. So and again, that's all stuff that the Idoneth kind of already did. So I like it. I like that I'm 3rd edition compliant. I like that my army's the same. Does it feel like it's going to drastically change the way I play my Idoneth army? Not really. Did we get a lot of new units? Not really. I was really hoping for those Foot Knights. Something that's a little bit tougher. Just another battle line choice that kind of expanded them. And this feels more like we put this book out with one new model, and now this battle, we've checked this Battletome off the list, that it does kind of enhancing and diving deeper into the army. You know, so I think it's interesting. The Idoneth were the first kind of really new faction in Age of Sigmar for the elves. And then it was Daughters of Cain, and then it's been Lumineth. And there's more stuff for the Lumineth and the Daughters of Cain than there is for the Idoneth. I was really hoping we would get the Daughters treatment, where we got some actually cool new units, or the Idoneth, where we got, or the Lumineth, where we got like a second wave of the army in this release. And we just got a Thrall Master, and the army's going to kind of play the same. So, I mean, I can keep dreaming. I love the miniatures. I love the background. I love this book. I think this book's going to be great and fun to play with because I don't have to like figure out how my army functions anymore. And I also don't have to carry 3 publications to have, well, I mean, I can do it off my phone, but I would have needed Morathi, the FAQ, and my old book to play the army before. I can just have my one Battletome now, which is nice. So I just hope for more. I want these older armies to get that second wave of Lumineth treatment as opposed to, you know, just like a new model, a new Battletome. I feel like that's becoming kind of de rigueur. That's becoming like the thing. Here's our plan for these books, is we give them a model and a book, and we can release them 2 at a time, right? So today there's also gonna be the Fire Slayers review, because the Fire and Fury box basically just did the same thing for the Fire Slayers, and you can check that out too. So anyway, big thanks for watching. I'm gonna try and check out a game with my new Idoneth, well, not my new Idoneth, but my Idoneth, using the new Battletome next week. And until then, I'm Ash. Have a good day. Hey there, I hope you enjoyed that video. There are tons of other games already recorded for you to watch. Click over to my channel page if you haven't already, and have a look through the dozens of playlists full of videos. I guarantee you'll discover a game you haven't seen played before. I put out new videos 7 days a week, and every day is themed to a different genre as I continue to explore the wider world of gaming. Of course, none of that's possible without you, the viewer, so click a like and subscribe if you'd like to stay on top of what's happening here daily. My 2 kids and I are massively grateful to be able to have the flexibility of this job so I can always maximize my time with them. If you want to support me continuing to put out this content, it's only possible because of my amazing backers on Patreon who support the studio, equipment, and model cost, as well as being how I make the bulk of my living. You can also help out by buying a t-shirt through Spreadshirt, a measuring gauge or widget from Death Ray Designs, or buying one of my games and supplements like Last Days, Gamma Wolves, and Blaster. As a way of showing my appreciation, patrons get early access to new games and supplements that I write throughout the course of the year. Huge thanks for watching, it really does help out, and happy gaming.